All right, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to come out and speak to you a little bit about what we're doing at Kennecott and what we've got in store for some land that we've got here in Magna. And I know there's a fair amount of people here who are pretty familiar with our operations, but I thought I'd start with about a 6-minute video that talks you through our operations, and then I've got a brief update on Kennecott, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the land that we've got here. That's kind of the overall agenda. A little bit more about me is I've been with Kennecott for about 13 years. I started out on the land side, and then I did about a 4-year stint in safety, and then I'm back on the land side again. And long-time resident of the Valley, Utah State grad, and did my undergrad at Utah State, my graduate work at the U, so I'm kind of both blue and red, but the right color blue and the right color red. But really appreciate the opportunity to come out and speak with you. A little bit about Bingham Canyon Mine. We're the second largest copper producer in the United States. This says that we supply about 7% of the nation's copper, and that changes depending on our production each year. Some years it's up to about 25% of the nation's copper. We've produced about 19 million tons in the largest man-made excavation on Earth. I think some of you may have seen the on KSL recently. There was a spot about our pink beds, and so we're doing a breast cancer awareness, and so some of our new truck beds are bright pink, and so you might be able to see some of those as you drive by our operation. But we'll start with this video and then go from there. We've got, I always tell people that if what we did was easy on this side of the mountain, on this side of the valley, we'd call it snowboarding, but instead we call it making copper, because it's a pretty elaborate process, and there's a lot to it. And it's a pretty fun process too. If you get a chance, when we get our visitor center, hopefully we get our visitor center redone in a year or two, more than welcome to invite you up to the mine and to come to the visitor center. We have essentially kind of 4 or 5 primary nodes, if you will, and the video talked a bit about each one of them. The first node is really our mine, and where we blast the ore and haul it out. And the second is really the concentrator, which is in West Jordan, essentially. So if you drive by on U111, it's that huge facility with lots of lights, right? And so that's where we grind up all of our material. And then if you're coming from the south and you look over, you can kind of see the conveyor belt lit up at night with green lights. That A-frame, which is where we store all the ore before it goes into the mill, before we grind it up. The A-frame, just to give you a scale, is about the size of Rice Eccles Stadium. That's how large that facility is where we store the ore before we grind it up. And if it's completely full, and we're running our concentrator at full capacity, we can grind all that ore in a day. Maybe a day and a half, if it's very, very full. And so we really only have about a day's worth of ore to grind out in our backlog on any given day. The next, after it goes to the concentrator, we talked about going to the smelter. Anybody here who worked at the smelter? Right here. Smelter is a very unique place. Some people who are here in this room right now would not be welcome at the smelter. And that's because you have facial hair. And so if you work at the smelter, you have to be fit for a respirator. And in order for a respirator to fit properly, you can't have any facial hair. Otherwise, it's not a good seal. And so smelter is a very unique place. Anytime you have molten copper, it's a pretty exciting part of the business. And to see them pour the anodes and to be part of that facility is pretty impressive. You probably feel a little bit of the impact of every couple of years when we have a shutdown and we bring in 2,000 contractors to rebuild the concentrator. You probably see an impact on, probably as a direct link to some of the businesses here in Magna to bring those The next stage is the refinery, which is just right up here. Curtis Hargrove, who is a member of the chamber and comes to a member of the meetings, works at the refinery there. And the refinery, what they didn't talk about in the video is that what falls out when the copper goes from 99% pure copper to 99.9% copper, that's where we get gold and silver, right? That 0.9%, that's where all the precious metals come out. And so some years we'll make between 200 and 400,000 ounces of gold, which kind of sounds like a lot of gold, but by weight and by volume, literally you could put that much gold under any of these tables in this room. Even though it sounds like 400,000 ounces, it sounds like a tremendous amount. Literally, it would fit under the table. And it would fit in the back of a pickup truck, although the pickup truck would just be smushed. It was a little too heavy for that. The last part is, the last part you see, which has an impact on Magna, is our tailings impoundment, right? So we have a tailings impoundment just to the north here, and that tailings impoundment is about 10,000 acres of tailings. And essentially, it's after we separate the copper from the ore, it talked about the flotation process. The tailings is essentially the rock that comes down from the mine that's not copper. And so that sits out there. And then we also have our power plant, which sits up on the hill, Utah Power. We call it our Utah Power Plant. So, and the last bit of the operation, well, let's see here. What else can I talk about? How many of you, I'm going to turn off the light so you can see this a little bit better. This is a bit, these two pictures are a little bit hard to understand. And what they are, they're pictures from the south, or from the north wall looking down into the pit. And looking down into the pit. And so these were taken in 2013, so right after the main phase slide happened. So we had a slide or a failure in one of our walls, in our east wall, in April 10th, 2013. And it had a huge impact on our operation. And what happened is that one of the upper walls in some historic dumps failed along a fault line. And we have a number of monitoring systems in the pit that monitor the walls at all times. And I don't know how familiar everyone is with mining, but a really well-designed mine, like if you were like a textbook, like a perfectly designed mine, all the walls would fall in on itself an hour after you brought out your last shovel of ore. Right? And so it's a constant battle of economics and safety whenever you design a mine to make sure that it's both efficient as well as safe. And so this is an instance where we didn't fully understand all the structures, all the geotechnical structures within the wall. And so one of them started to move as we were mining, and we were able to monitor that movement. And so we were able to evacuate everyone out of the pit before the slide happened. And so the slide was about 160 million tons. And so to kind of give you perspective of what that looks like, that would essentially be, how big is Magna Township? Like how many acres? Anybody know? So it would be 40 feet of fill across 1,000 acres is what 160 million tons looks like. So it's a tremendous amount of material. And so essentially, that we move, on a given year, we move about 250 million tons, and so that's about 8 months worth of work, only working on that. And unfortunately, as it slid, the most common question I get is, well, did it uncover any ore? And none of it was ore. It was all waste. It was all waste, and it didn't uncover any ore. It just was more waste there. And so we've been in process of moving that material out of the pit ever since. And is it 100% done? No, but a lot of it has moved out, and it's dramatically changed. What we discovered due to additional monitoring is that you see in this corner right up here, this is what we call the Parnell fault. And we found that was moving as well. And so rather than let that wash into the bottom of our pit, we decided to start hauling that out and mining that as well. And so you can see that from 2013, and it's a little bit hard to see from these pictures, I know from the back room, but we've moved a tremendous amount of material in this corner, and it's also all been waste, but it's been to prevent it from going down to the bottom of the pit.
So is that all basically waste?
And like I said, we knew it was going to fail, but we didn't know to the extent it was going to fail. Meaning, we thought it was just going to kind of slough down into the bottom of the pit and kind of buttress itself out. Instead, as it failed, it was like a rock avalanche. And so as it came down out of this corner, it had such velocity, it washed out some of the benches on the bottom of the pit. And so it was just like an avalanche of rock. And there was about a couple of different events. And I describe it as like, first the frosting came off and then the cake, essentially. But we had staged a number of pieces of equipment in the bottom of the pit in anticipation of the recovery and being able to operate. And unfortunately, we saw about 14 haul trucks on the news all washed up in the bottom of the pit, crammed together. Those haul trucks, we don't really like to treat that way in general. And we weren't, actually several of them were salvageable, but the overwhelming majority were complete loss. So we didn't even, I think we might have stripped the copper out of it. But it's just because that's how we are. That's who we are. Any questions on this, on the slide recovery? And you're welcome to ask me any questions as we go as well. It's pretty exciting. We also have some dewatering going on in the pit. So we have some underground workings that we've done, and those underground workings are primarily here both to dewater the pit and also to help us understand how costly or efficient it would be to capture some new ore that's out. If you look at the Bingham Canyon Mine right now, there's more copper in the ground than we've taken out. It's just a matter of whether or not it's economical to get out. But we know it's there. And so that's the challenge that we face as we try to keep the mine open, is just the economics of it. One of the things, I think I told you that I worked for Kennecott for about 13 years. The last 4 I worked in safety, and I'm pretty proud of our safety record. So do you remember, for those of you who worked at Kennecott before, what was safety like at Kennecott? I'm curious when you worked there, or if you still work there.
Well, towards the end, they got really strong on safety. So I remember back when I first hired on, you clean underneath the conveyor belt while it was moving.
Pretty scary. Some of you brought up Ruth Baer, who's a longtime resident of Magna. I was talking to her about some of her experiences with working at Kennecott, and she tells a story how she was, there was at least twice, I think, in the hour or so that I visited with her, she told us a different story about how she was almost killed at Kennecott.
I was killed.
You were killed. Well,
Thank conveyor belt talking about.
yeah. Well, we're glad you're here today.
Goes to Kennecott Pass. There's no room in heaven for me and no room in hell.
So this just shows our we track all of our injuries, right? And we run them through a math problem to see how well we are compared to other industries and other mines. And this graph right here is the U.S. average injury rate. So it's at 2.2. And Kennecott, last year, our injury rate was 0.42, which says that, hey, we're significantly better than the national average. We injure people at 1/5 of the rate of the national average, right? That said, we still had some injuries, and some of them last year were pretty scary. And unfortunately, we've had some injuries this year. So we're still trying to get better. We've made significant progress. Go ahead, did you have a question?
Does that track just employees or employees and contractors?
Employees and contractors. So we track both employees and contractors. in our hours. I visited a construction site recently downtown, and this was the safety induction process. It was like, hey, we're glad you came. Here is a waiver. You'll just sign this. If you get hurt on our side, it's your own fault. Which I was pretty surprised by, and because if we take it a lot more personally, and so if you get injured on our site, we think it's our fault, and so we try to make sure that everyone goes home with their fingers and toes and appendages, and unfortunately we had an incident this year was pretty significant injury just right up the street here in Magna that we should do better than. So that's how we look at that. And so we're going to try to learn and get better from that. A couple more slides. People always ask if we make more money from our byproducts than we make from our copper. And overwhelmingly, we make more money from our copper. Right? We make a lot of money from our byproducts, but we're still a copper company. Copper is king, and the byproducts really follow where we get the copper from. So we manufacture gold, silver, copper, molybdenum, and sulfuric acid. Those are our primary products. So sulfuric acid, you'll see in the white tanker cars that are the train cars out here. Last year, I think we did 180,000 tons of sulfuric acid. Copper, this is showing our copper, excuse me, I got that totally wrong. 820,000 tons of sulfuric acid. Last year, this is showing 2014 results. 2014, we did about 225,000 tons of copper. Last year, due to ore grade challenges and pit challenges, we only did around 100,000 tons. And so some people were talking about whether or not we still have contractors on property. And the answer is yes, we absolutely still have contractors. But the numbers of contractors that we've had are greatly reduced just because we're not making as much. Our volume is down and our profits are down.
They still only mine the gold vein every 23 days?
The gold typically follows the copper. And so I've not ever heard that we mine a gold vein every 23 days.
It was when I worked at
Yeah, so that's not how we do it now. We have about, this was for 2014, it said we have about 2,500 employees. We have about 1,750 employees now. This is my second to last slide. The other thing that you'll see in the next few years is that, and if you drive by the pit now, if you drive up U-111 and look off to the right, you'll see a lot of earthwork in the front of the dumps. A lot of movement. And so what we call that project is the East Waste Rock Project. And what's happening is that we're going to begin stacking our waste rock in front of those dumps. And some of those dumps are historically pretty tall and pretty steep, and so we've been unable to reclaim them as they currently are situated. And so what we're going to do is we're going to build up our waste rock in front of them and then cap it with topsoil. And so the view shed of the mine will change significantly over the next 5 to 10 years. And so it won't just be the waste rock that you see out in front of it, but it'll be reclaimed areas. And so we'll be able to plant plants and grow native vegetation up on the slopes.
So that answers the Land Reclamation Act?
It's partly reclamation. Will it be 100%? No, but does it help? Yes. Okay, so this is some of the property that we have in Magna. My role now at Kennecott is to essentially to sell some of our excess non-strategic property. And so a couple of the pieces that we've identified are here in Magna. So this is 7200 West, and this is 80th West, and this is Highway 201. And the majority of this property right through here is owned by Kennecott. And here, I'll pull up this slide right here. So this slide, the blue parcels, so I zoomed out again. The blue parcels are the parcels that are owned by Kennecott. And so really the parcels that I wanted to talk to you as a chamber in the county are these blue parcels both on the north side and on the south, the north side and the south side of Highway 201. And so on the south is there's a couple of in-holdings. Ruth owns that one and this one. In-holdings isn't the right term, but there's a couple of parcels that we don't own that are owned by others that are within this zone. But this is what we own is about 200 acres. And you'll see, most of you are pretty familiar with this. This is the Ritter Canal that runs through here. Yeah. This is Highway 201 and 7200 West. And so as we look at this property, this is property that we are not going to develop, but we're going to sell to a different developer, essentially. And so we wanted to talk to the chamber a bit about what are some of the potential future uses, because we look at this property as some that can have some good strategic value for the town of Magna, can help build the tax base, and also can help build the resident base of Magna. And so we look at it and we think it has both commercial uses as well as residential uses. But that's really up for discussion. And I think if we look at this property together, the development will be more successful than if we just looked at it all by ourselves. Go ahead.
To say one of the long-range discussions I know that was had with both community councils over the years has been around the Ritter Canal. Mm-hmm. You know, where in West Valley with the Utah Salt Lake Canal, and as we're moving west, currently we've developed multi-use trails along that canal so folks can go out and ride a bike or walk, or in some cases around here you might find the horse out on that as well. Uh-huh. You know. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I know as we're moving into that discussion phase, one of the things that will probably come up is going to be a discussion of of putting, just like like you've done in West Valley City when they developed the business park there and such, would be having that discussion as well.
Yeah, I think the canals have a tremendous benefit, and they've also, in some cases, are I don't know how to say this right. There's a lot of uses, and sometimes there's some secondary uses that happen that aren't always sanctioned, if that makes sense. And so, but I think as we looked at this canal, we thought it was a natural buffer between uses of potential property. And as we have studied the development of Daybreak and others, the number one amenity that people are asking for, or it's always in the top three, is walking trails, right? And it's certainly a pretty great amenity to just be able to get out and walk and not have to worry about other traffic around. And something that I enjoy doing as well. Any other questions? We also, some of you are aware that recently I went through Township Planning Commission. There's a batch plant. Right, that's this parcel right there. A new concrete batch plant. Yep, go ahead.
Will there be any restrictions on this land as it's conveyed to its next owner because of groundwater, risk from the dike breaking, that sort of thing? So will this be land that's usable without a lot of restrictions?
That's our anticipation. Right. So this land historically has been used by Kennecott to collect water, for water that we use in our operations. From our tailings impoundment, we pump up to our grind facility, our concentrator, about 32,000 to 35,000 gallons of water a minute that we recycle. And so we are a tremendous user of water. And some of that water has been sourced from this property. A few years ago, we sunk a deep well that replaced the need for the other surface wells that we have. So they still operate in somewhat of a fashion, but our anticipation is as the property transitions ownership, that those wells will be capped, and that the property will be, other than this deep well, which is also a drinking water quality well, will be capped and moved on. So our anticipation, we do have, as you know, the tailings impoundment has been an issue in the past, and we anticipate that this, we're more sensitive to the development that goes on in this corner. We